Well, my secret almost killed me. It started innocently enough, if you can call anything that detonates your life innocent. With a look, a forbidden spark at my own daughter's third-grade school play. One stolen glance that led to clandestine meetings, whispered lies, and ended with my perfectly curated New England life exploding right in my face. I'm Emily Thompson, and this is the unvarnished truth of how I risked everything. My marriage, my reputation, my daughter's happiness, for a man who wasn't my husband, right under the noses of the most discerning and judgmental community in America. They say Hanover, New Hampshire is a town where secrets go to die, suffocated by good breeding and historic preservation. My life, from the outside, was the Hanover dream. Picture it. A stately colonial on a tree-lined street, spitting distance from the Dartmouth campus. My husband, Jeff, a respected professor, good-looking, brilliant, and as I'd slowly come to realize, about as emotionally available as a granite statue on the green. We had Chloe, our bright, bubbly 8-year-old, who attended the prestigious Marion Cross Elementary, the kind of school that has legacy admissions even at that age. We were, by all Hanoverian standards, a success. I volunteered, I hosted charmingly rustic dinner parties. I even pretended to understand the nuances of Jeff's latest economics lecture. I was the perfect faculty wife. I was also slowly suffocating. The ambition I once had, my career in art, was a ghost that occasionally rattled its chains in the quiet hours after everyone was asleep. My days were a predictable cycle of school runs, errands at the co-op, and the subtle, pervasive pressure to maintain appearances. My story isn't unique, I guess, but the stakes here, in this town that prides itself on its pristine image, felt astronomically high. But first, please like this video and subscribe if you enjoy these stories. It helps a lot. So, there I was, at Chloe's school play. Our town's heritage, or something equally earnest and mind-numbing. The auditorium buzzed, with the low hum of parental pride and suppressed yawns. Jeff naturally sat beside me, his face angled towards the stage, but his thumbs were a dead giveaway, flying across his phone screen under the cover of the program. Another urgent email, another vital departmental crisis that couldn't possibly wait until after his daughter recited her 2 lines about the resilient spirit of New Hampshire's early settlers. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. A bone-deep weariness that had settled in years ago. I felt like part of the wallpaper, another fixture in the room, noted but not truly seen. I let my gaze wander over the sea of familiar faces. The professors, the doctors, the lawyers, the women whose families had probably arrived on the Mayflower and never quite let anyone forget it. Standard Hanover. Then my eyes landed on him. Paul O'Connell. He was newer to town, a single dad. His daughter, Anya, was in Chloe's class. He wasn't like the other Hanover dads, all LL Bean and understated plaids. There was something a little rougher around the edges, a quiet intensity in the way he watched his daughter on stage. He was actually watching. As if sensing my gaze, he turned. Our eyes met. Just for a heartbeat. And he smiled. Not the polite, dismissive smile I was used to. This was different. It was direct, a little knowing, maybe even a touch empathetic. It was a jolt, pure and simple. A tiny, unexpected flicker of warmth in the frozen tundra of my emotional landscape. In that moment, he saw me. Not Mrs. Professor Thompson, not Chloe's mom, just me. The play ended, applause filled the room, but all I could think about was that look. It was the first crack in the perfect facade of my life, and God help. Me, I wanted to see what was on the other side, that first look from Paul at the school play. It was like he'd lit a pilot light I hadn't even realized was extinguished. Suddenly Hanover, in all its picturesque Ivy League glory, felt different. Sharper, more populated by possibilities. Or maybe that was just him. After that night, I started seeing Paul everywhere. Coincidence? In a town as small and interconnected as Hanover, perhaps. But each sighting felt less like chance and more like a carefully orchestrated beat in some forbidden rhythm only we could hear. There he was at the Hanover Fall Festival on the Green, amidst the scent of cider donuts and the rustle of fallen leaves, a slight amused smile playing on his lips as he watched his daughter, Anya, try to win a stuffed moose nearly twice her size. Our eyes met over a pyramid of prize-winning pumpkins. This time, the smile was warmer, a silent acknowledgement. Then again, at the Saturday Farmers' Jeffed by the river, him expertly navigating the crowds, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder, looking like he actually belonged there, unlike half the town who treated it as a social obligation. I was fumbling, with too many bags of organic kale, a Hanover staple naturally, and he just materialized, effortlessly taking one from me. "Looks like you've got your hands full," he'd said, his voice a low rumble that did unsettling things to my composure. A brief chat about the merits of local honey, the absurdity of a $20 heirloom tomato, and then he was gone, leaving me feeling strangely breathless. The real conversation started, as these things often do, under the guise of parental duty, a school fundraising committee meeting. I'd reluctantly volunteered, mostly to escape another evening listening to Jeff dissect the dean's latest policy memo. Paul was there, sketching idly on a notepad, looking both bored and observant. We ended up paired together, tasked with soliciting donations from local businesses, a job no one else wanted. Walking down Main Street, armed with our clipboards and forced smiles, the talk flowed with an ease I hadn't experienced in years. We talked about the kids, of course, but then veered into the absurd pressures of this town, the way it seemed to demand perfection from everyone, even the 8-year-olds. He confessed he sometimes felt like an anthropologist studying a strange, overachieving tribe. I laughed, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that startled even me. He didn't just listen, he heard. He saw the cracks in my perfect faculty wife veneer, and didn't flinch. Those engineered moments became our lifeline. A lingering chat after PTA, dissecting the latest school initiative with a shared cynical humor. Discovering we both frequented the same, slightly less trendy coffee shop in White River Junction, just across the river in Vermont, on the rare occasions we needed an escape from the Hanover bubble. Each shared glance, each quick laugh, felt like a delicious, dangerous secret. I was coming alive, but the fear was a constant companion. This was Hanover, after all. A town built on hushed whispers and knowing looks. One afternoon, Paul and I were talking a little too long, a little too animatedly, outside Marion Cross after pickup. I saw Eleanor Ainsworth, whose family practically was Hanover. Her perfectly coiffed silver head turning, her gaze lingering on us with an unnerving intensity. The smile she offered was pure Arctic frost. The fear was so potent, it was a physical sensation, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. The minefield was real. The text started innocently. "Anya left her science worksheet. Does Chloe have it?" An easy excuse. Then, "Did you see the article on that new exhibit at the Hood Museum? Might take Anya." And somehow, that morphed into discussions about the art itself, about books we were reading, about the frustrating, beautiful, complicated business of being alive. The messages became more frequent, arriving later in the evening after Jeff was engrossed in his research and Chloe was asleep. His words were a balm, an escape. He understood my restlessness, my unspoken yearnings. He didn't judge, he validated. Then came the text that changed everything. "I'm going to be in Lebanon tomorrow afternoon. There's a little antique map shop there I've been meaning to check out. Just an idea." Lebanon. Close, but not Hanover. Anonymous, or so I hoped. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't about school projects or chance encounters anymore. This was a choice. I typed back, my fingers trembling. What time? The thrill was terrifying, exhilarating. I told Jeff I had a long overdue appointment with a specialist at Dartmouth Hitchcock. The lie slipped out with an ease that horrified and excited me in equal measure. The carefully constructed walls of my Hanover life were beginning to tremble. And I was the one, brick by brick, helping to pull them down. That first meeting in Lebanon, the antique map shop, a quiet corner in a nondescript diner, it was like stepping out of my own skin and into the life I only dreamed about. Paul was easy, attentive, his gaze making me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. It wasn't just the conversation, though. It was the intoxicating thrill of transgression, the liberation of being utterly anonymous, miles away from the judging eyes of Hanover. One meeting bled into another. The vibrant reds and golds of the New England autumn became the backdrop to our stolen afternoons. We explored winding Vermont backroads, discovered forgotten diners, and lost ourselves in hours of conversation, fueled by cheap coffee and a desperate magnetic pull. The affair, when it began, felt less like a sordid betrayal and more like an inevitable sunrise after a long, dark night. It was passionate, reckless, and terrifyingly wonderful. I was playing with fire, and I knew it, but the warmth was too seductive to resist. Jeff remained oblivious, cocooned in his academic world. Chloe was happy. My meticulously ordered Hanover life continued on its placid surface, while underneath, a seismic shift was occurring. Paul and I grew bolder, intoxicated by our secret. We found a discreet inn nestled in the Green Mountains, a place where no one knew our names, where Mrs. Thompson ceased to exist and only Emily remained. The stark beauty of early winter mirrored the fierce, almost painful intimacy we found. In those hidden rooms, the world outside blanketed in snow and silence, our secret world fiercely alive. But Hanover, even when you tried to escape it, had a way of closing in. The close call, when it came, was brutally effective. It was mid-January, a classic New England blizzard. Dartmouth was closed, Marion Cross was closed, the entire Upper Valley was shutting down. Jeff was unexpectedly home, a restless presence pacing the house, complaining about missed seminars. Paul and I, foolishly, had planned to meet. We'd found a supposedly empty faculty house on the outskirts of town, one whose owners were on sabbatical in Europe. The snow, we thought, would be our cover. No one would be out. How wrong we were. I'd concocted a flimsy excuse about checking on the elderly, shut-in Mrs. Henderson down the street, a plausible act of Hanoverian civic duty. The drive, usually 10 minutes, took nearly 30 in the blinding snow. The faculty house was cold, eerily silent. Paul was already there, his face etched with a mixture of relief and anxiety. We barely had time to shed our snow-covered coats, the adrenaline of the risky venture making our stolen moments even more charged, when we heard it. A car, slowly crunching its way up the unplowed driveway. Panic, cold, and sharp, sliced through me. We froze, staring at each other, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the frigid air. Through a frosted window pane, I saw the dark silhouette of a familiar SUV. My blood turned to ice. It was Dean Rockwell's car, Jeff's boss. And in the passenger seat, craning her neck to get a better look at the supposedly empty house, was Eleanor Ainsworth, her sharp eyes missing nothing. My God, were they checking on the house too? Or had someone seen Paul's car slightly out of place and made a call? We didn't wait to find out. Scrambling, hearts pounding, we slipped out the back door, plunging into the deep snow of the bow. Woods behind the house, hoping the swirling flakes would cover our tracks, our escape. We made it to my car, hidden further down the road, my breath tearing at my lungs, soaked and freezing, but the chill went bone deep, far beyond the weather. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Eleanor Ainsworth's knowing, hawk-like face was seared into my mind. Had she seen us? Or just the cars? The uncertainty was torture. Later that week, the Hanover Town Facebook group was buzzing. A local architect, a man with a seemingly perfect family, had been caught in an affair. His life, his career, his family were unraveling with brutal public efficiency. People I knew, women from my book club, mothers from Chloe's school, were dissecting the scandal with a grim, almost gleeful righteousness. Can you imagine the humiliation? One posted. In a town like Hanover, your reputation is everything. I stared at the screen, the words blurring, the architect's shame becoming my own projected future. The thrill of the affair curdled into a sickening dread. Paul and I had crossed a threshold. There was no going back to innocent flirtation, no pretending this was a harmless escape. The idyllic snow globe of our secret world had been violently shaken, and the pieces were threatening to shatter everything. The architect's downfall was Hanover's cautionary tale, served up with morning coffee and afternoon tea for weeks. Every hushed conversation I overheard at the co-op, every carefully worded comment in my book club, felt like a direct message. Such a shame for his children. His wife must be mortified. Honestly, what was he thinking? In a place like Hanover? Each word was a tiny hammer blow against the fragile shell of my composure. The near miss at the faculty house, Eleanor Ainsworth's piercing gaze, these things replayed in my mind on a torturous loop. The intoxicating thrill of the affair had been replaced by a gnawing, relentless anxiety. Suddenly, every familiar street in Hanover felt like enemy territory, every passing acquaintance a potential accuser. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. When I did drift off, nightmares of public humiliation, of Chloe's heartbroken face would jolt me awake, my heart pounding in the suffocating silence of my pristine colonial bedroom, Jeff breathing evenly beside me, oblivious. How could he not sense the turmoil raging within me? But then, he'd never been one for noticing the subtle shifts in my emotional weather. I looked at my life, the beautiful home, the intelligent husband, the charming daughter, and it all felt like a stage set for a play I no longer knew the lines to. What had I done? And more importantly, what was I going to do now? Paul and I met a few days after the blizzard incident. Not at a cozy inn or a bustling cafe, but on a stark, windswept path along the Connecticut River, the water gray and choppy, under a winter sky. The easy laughter, the comfortable silences that had defined our early encounters were gone, replaced by a heavy, unspoken tension. He looked tired, the shadows under his eyes mirroring my own. "Did anyone?" I started, unable. To finish the sentence, he shook his head. "I don't think so." But that was too close, Emily. Way too close. His voice was flat, devoid of the warmth that had drawn me to him. We both knew it. The magic, the illusion of their invincibility, had been shattered by that near discovery. That architect, I began, the words tasting like ash. "I know," he said, his gaze fixed on the churning river. "This town, it doesn't forgive easily. The unspoken hung between us. What are we doing? Where can this possibly go?" He didn't push. He didn't demand. But in his eyes I saw a question, a plea almost. For what, I wasn't sure. For an answer I didn't have. I started taking long walks alone, usually ending up in the Old Town Cemetery, a sprawling, quiet place on the edge of Hanover, where generations of stern-faced New Englanders lay beneath weathered stones. It was here, among the ghosts of reputation, the names that had built this town and guarded its image so fiercely, that I truly confronted the precipice I was standing on. I thought of Chloe. How would this affect her? In Hanover, children were often extensions of their parents' social standing. Friendships could fray, invitations could dry up, subtle cruelties could emerge in the schoolyard, all because of adult transgressions. The thought of her paying the price for my recklessness was a physical pain, a tightening in my chest that made it hard to breathe. And what about me? If this came out, who would I be? No longer Mrs. Professor Thompson, the respectable faculty wife. I'd be that woman, the adulteress, the homewrecker. My carefully constructed identity would be obliterated. Could I withstand the social ostracization, the pitying looks, the whispers that would follow me down Main Street? Or would I become another Hanover cautionary tale, a footnote in the town's long memory of scandals quietly, or not so quietly, managed? The affair had woken me up, made me feel alive, but now, standing amongst the silent, judging stones, I wondered if that awakening would ultimately destroy everything I knew, everything I was supposed to be. The choice was stark. Retreat back into the gilded cage, forever changed, or face the storm head-on, with no guarantee of survival. And I had no idea which path was the lesser of two evils. The Hanover Cemetery, with its stoic headstones and silent judgment, became my unwilling confessional. But no amount of solitary walks or internal bargaining could stop the inevitable. Eleanor Ainsworth, it turned out, was not one to let a tantalizing thread of gossip go unpulled. That glimpse of Paul's car at the supposedly empty sabbatical house, my own flimsy excuse for being in the area during a blizzard, it was enough. In Hanover, suspicion, once planted, grows like a pernicious weed. It started subtly. A cooler-than-usual nod from a fellow PTA mom, an invitation to a faculty wives' coffee morning that never arrived, Jeff coming home with a creased brow, mentioning offhandedly that Dean Rockwell had asked some odd questions about my well-being. The explosion I'd feared, the one I'd courted with every stolen glance and secret meeting, didn't happen in a dramatic public confrontation. It happened in the sterile quiet of our own perfectly appointed kitchen, late, one Tuesday night. Jeff had been distant for days, a cold, polite wall between us. He finally looked at me, his eyes, usually lost in academic abstractions, were sharp, wounded. "Emily," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "People are talking. About you. And Paul O'Connell." There it was. No shouting, no accusations hurled like crockery. Just the quiet, devastating certainty of exposure. The world didn't so much explode as it simply fractured. Irreparably. I didn't deny it. What was the point? The energy I'd spent weaving the web of lies was gone, leaving only a hollow exhaustion. I told him not everything, but enough. Enough for the carefully constructed facade of Professor and Mrs. Thompson of Elm Street to crumble into dust. The days that followed are a blur of hushed, painful conversations. The bewildered, tear-filled eyes of my daughter Chloe as we tried to explain the inexplicable and the swift, brutal efficiency of Hanover's social guillotine. News in a town like this travels faster than wildfire. My affair wasn't just a private heartbreak, it was a public spectacle. The pitying glances, the sudden silences when I entered a room, the way mothers subtly steered their children away from Chloe at school pickup. It was a social death by 1,000 tiny cuts. Paul, facing his own version of this public reckoning, became a ghost, another casualty. Our passionate, incandescent affair was reduced to sordid whispers at dinner parties I was no longer invited to. The perfect colonial on Elm Street went up for sale. Jeff and I, with a grim civility, began the process of dismantling our life. Leaving Hanover wasn't a choice. It was an escape, a necessary amputation to save what little was left of my sanity and to shield Chloe from the relentless fallout. The bold departure I'd sometimes fantasized about felt anything but bold. It felt like a rout, a shameful retreat. I'd torched my life, just as I'd hinted at in the beginning, but standing in the ashes, there was no sense of liberation, only a profound, aching loss and the bitter taste of consequence. We moved to a nondescript apartment in a city far from the claustrophobic charm of New England academia. Life is quieter now, smaller. I found a part-time job in a small art gallery, the scent of turpentine and old canvases a faint echo of a life I once knew. Chloe is adjusting, slowly. Children are resilient, they say. I hope they're right. There are days I look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. The fear is gone, replaced by a strange, hard-won clarity. I flew too close to the sun, and the fall was spectacular. But I'm still here. Changed, undeniably. Broken, perhaps, in places, but not entirely destroyed. The gilded cage of Hanover is behind me, and what lies ahead is uncertain, unwritten. A messy, forced new beginning indeed. That's my story, or at least the part of it I can bear to tell. It's easy to judge from the outside, isn't it? To cluck your tongue and say, she got what she deserved. Maybe I did. What would you have done? And if you want to hear more stories like this, about the complexities of life and the choices that define us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out.